everyone. Welcome to week 3. For some of you, this might be kind of a shock. Oh my gosh, at the end of this week, the course is half over. It does move quickly. Like I said, this is an intense summer class. I want to start off with a little bit of a reality check in terms of your points to date. In other words, in terms of your grade, which you can self-check. You can go in and look and see what points you have. At the end of this week, after you submit the midterm, you would have had an opportunity to have earned 56 points. There's 2 points each for the discussion boards. There's been 3 of those. We've had 2 quizzes with 20 points, and then the midterm will count for 30. It's important for you to pay attention to where you're at. There's no extra points to be earned, extra credit, makeup exams, all those kind of things. You need to submit your work on time and in the proper format. There's 44 points left after the end of this week, after you've submitted the midterm. And I will post your midterm, I will send you individual email, but then I will also post what points you have in your grade book so that you can look at that. Now, here's what I want to talk about. The last day to drop this course with a W is July 18th. Students seem to have some sort of misconception about a W. A W does not affect your GPA. It doesn't affect your standing. If you, dropped every other course you ever took in junior college, and then you submitted your transcripts to a four-year university, and they might wonder, well, why are they dropping so much? I mean, do they have any commitment? But an occasional W means nothing. It doesn't affect your GPA, and helps protect you if you're not going to pass a course. Because here's the deal: after July 18th, on July 19th, then I'm forced as an instructor to give you a letter grade for this course. If you're still in the course on July 19th, you will get a letter grade. So to protect yourself, look at what points you have, judge what those are, and then see how many points are left. I do, as an instructor, have some discretion to drop you. For instance, if you have a repeated episode of plagiarism, I can drop you. Also, if you've in an on-ground course, if you miss more than 1/6 of the class time, I can drop you. In this online course, if by July 18th you haven't submitted any work, I probably will drop you. But it's not my responsibility to do that. The only reason I would drop you is to protect you somewhat, because again, a W is going to be a heck of a lot better than having an F on your transcript. Okay. I'm not going to belabor this. I just want to make sure you're aware of it, but pay attention to where you're at. You can certainly maximize the points available, and some students have maximized the points already in this course, because it's clear to me that the reason that they're doing well in the quizzes is because they're reading the text and it's all there, and they're watching the videos, and they're taking the time to ponder this a bit, think about it, put it together, and then do well on the quizzes. So you can certainly do very well on this course and maximize the points that are left if you will give it the attention it deserves. Well, in that vein, let's go to the midterm. Let's talk about the midterm exam. There is some interesting terminology once again in this free will debate, and the midterm will focus mostly on the issue of free will. There will be some questions again that will count for a certain portion of those 30 points. I think it's 10 points. And those questions should be gifts, in the sense that everything that's being asked is in the text. You've carefully read the text, and you shouldn't have any problems with answering those questions. This is an open book. You have the entire week to get this done and submit it at the end of the week. The essay, again, is important, and I gave you some feedback on the essay that was quiz 2, so you should have had some practice to kind of get you where you need to be in terms of writing a position paper. You hit the ground running, have your thesis clearly announced. In this case, your thesis is really going to be one of 2 options. You can write about why you're a determinist, or why you believe in libertarianism. And as you do that, you need to pay attention to the elements within the selection that you've chosen in terms of the philosophy. The book clearly talks about the 2 versions of determinism. You've got soft and hard determinism. The determinist is clearly an outgrowth of materialism. Look, if you're a chemical machine, and that's about all there really is to say, genuine free will, in other words, what we might think of is the freedom to choose one of two courses of action irrespective of what our brain chemistry is doing, is an illusion. It's all about chemistry. It's all about what's happening in that chemical brain. That's hard determinism, and it comes from an outgrowth again of materialism. So this is how this course builds on itself a bit. Now the problem, of course, that surfaces immediately, well, then how do we praise and blame people? I mean, if it's all about determinism. In the hard version of determinism, that's brushed aside with simply saying, well, it doesn't really matter. We need to protect society. So, to put people in jail is a protective measure. Yeah, they're just doing what they chemically were forced, let's say, to do. That seemed unsatisfactory, so the determinists came up with this term called soft determinism, which is also known as compatibilism. And here's where students get a little lost, because compatibilism just seems like a friendly term. I'm a compatible person. Why not be a compatibilist? What it is in philosophy is that you're trying to suggest that determinism is compatible with free will, and therefore holding people accountable. But what's happened, and you need to pay attention to that, is that the compatibilist has redefined free will from something that we might normally recognize and understand to a narrow definition where free will is simply whatever you do, whatever that chemical machine inside of you does, is accountable as long as some outside force and someone wasn't putting a gun to your head and forcing you to do things. Then that particular view, anything that you would do without that outside influence is you're to be held accountable for. Now, in the discussion board exercise, when we got into the Dan White case, it goes one step further, because no one put a gun to Dan White's head and forced him into that city hall to kill Harvey Milk and Mayor Moscone. He went in there by himself without that outside force. The defense claimed that there was an inner force at work that wasn't characteristic of Dan White's, quote, normal behaviors, associated with his depression and his, addiction to sugary foods, especially Twinkies, and, it was called the Twinkies defense, that he wasn't who he normally would be, and therefore he was coerced in some sense by this chemical imbalance to commit those crimes and should be treated leniently. That was a very controversial decision when it came out, by the way. But that's kind of what's going on with deep compatibilism, where the view is that if we're going to try to get a handle on when we can really hold someone accountable, we need to make sure that they're doing what they would normally choose to do, without some new chemical imbalance, or that they are not being forced by someone else. Now, the reason to bring this up is that as you go through, if you choose to write on determinism, you need to be familiar with this terminology. You just can't write in vague terms. You got to go through and express whether you're taking the hard or soft version, and then of course you have to give a good thesis defense of the version you choose. Use some examples. You can use your own if you want, or use some that are in the text, and then of course deal with the counter argument, an opposing argument against what you're trying to sell, and answer why that is not devastating to your thesis. Okay. Now, when you transition into, if you were not inclined to accept determinism but believe in libertarianism, then for our purposes, I've kind of given that two different versions, and you need to make that distinction as well. The notion of genuine free will I have associated with kind of the substance dualist, because clearly if you have some substance inside of you, the mind, spirit, body, the mind or spirit, soul, whatever you want to think of it as, that is ontologically independent and therefore not tethered to what chemistry does, then you have a mechanism to give you genuine free will. That would be that consciousness that allows you to exercise free will that is not simply a byproduct of chemicals in your system. Of course, the counter-argument to that is going to be, well, wait a minute, let's go back and talk about the issues of substance dualism again, because there are some criticisms of substance dualism. But a substance dualist clearly has a pathway to argue for genuine free will. The other and the interesting development in philosophy is this radical free will that Jean-Paul Sartre advocates. And I can't teach this course in this video segment, but take a hard look at that, because Sartre's not a substance dualist. And he argues in a very unique and passionate way for radical free will as kind of a brute fact. Just, there's no way to explain it. It's just there. It's what we have. Let's face it, which can be a little, which also has to be a criticism of its ontological status. Where does it come from? And so a paper that advocated radical free will at some point would need to address that issue. And once again, in these counter arguments to your thesis, you may not have the perfect solution for the counter argument, but you need to address it. You need to state what it might be and how you might respond to it in a way that would still allow someone to embrace the thesis that you're presenting. Okay, I don't want to make these recordings overly long. Adult learning strategies have convinced me that watching a talking head for more than 15 minutes or so is sometimes counterproductive. So that's why these are fairly short and to the point. So once again, the midterm is a 30-pointer. So you want to start early in the week. And I have been sending out occasional group emails that kind of reinforce some of the things that I say in these instructor videos. So get a good start on this. Get the questions out of the way first. That would be my suggestion. Get in the book. Some of you may already know the answers because you already read the book and you've comprehended it. If you need to get back in the book, you'll find the answers to the questions. If you carefully read this section, and they're not incredibly long sections. I've had many students come to me about this book after the class on-ground classes and say, that it was a very readable book. I can tell you for certain that some of these $100 plus books that many of the 20,000 plus community college instructors in Intro to Philosophy in the United States use are written almost at the graduate level. Very difficult reads. This is not that sort of textbook. It's basically lecture notes that I would use in a normal class where I'm trying to pitch this at a level that I believe students should be able to comprehend. So use that resource. That's what you need to get through this course. And then work on your essay, which you should do a first draft, let it sit for a little while, take another look at it, another critical look at it, make sure that your thesis is clearly expressed, that you're using the proper terminology, you're not misapplying some terms, and then that you've dealt with a rebuttal, that you have a rebuttal component by dealing with a counter argument and providing a way to answer it. And I will, of course, after the midterms are submitted, I will start to do my work, giving you the feedback, and then assigning you the points that you've earned. So I wish you well in this endeavor, and once again, we're closing in on halfway through this course. So keep at it, and it'll be over soon, and you will, if you do the work, I think you'll be happy with the results. So good luck with things.